So in the first part of this program, we include a file called pitches.h, and pitches.h essentially is this file here, which has a bunch of constants, and their values are equal to the frequencies of the different notes in the musical alphabet. And this is just a way to make it easier to refer to the notes. So rather than remembering their frequencies, we can refer to them by their note names. So for example, the note C2 has the frequency of 65 Hz. So that's what that is. And then we have a constant that stores the pin number for the speaker, which is set to 9. We then have a constant that stores the pin number for the LED, which is set to 2. We then have an array of buttons. We have 4 buttons in this program, which are mapped to these different pins here. We then have an array of tones. So we're using the notes C4, D4, E4, and F4. And this array is related to this button array up here. So the note C4 relates to pin 3, which is button 3, and the note D4 relates to button 4. Alright? And then we call the setup function, which sets the speaker and LED to output, and then we go through all the buttons and set them as inputs. For functions in this program, we only have one really, but it's been overloaded here. You see that this one doesn't have any parameters, and this one has one parameter. And the main difference between these is that when we call this function, we're checking to see if any button is pressed at all, and if any button is pressed, then it'll return true, otherwise it'll return false. With this program, we're checking for this specific button. If this specific button isn't being pressed, then it'll return false, otherwise it'll return true. For the main loop, the first thing we do is check if any button is being pressed, and if any button is being pressed, we continue with the rest of the program. We then write the LED to high, and then we iterate through all of the different buttons, and we check if each specific button is being pressed. So if the specific button is being pressed, then we play the tone that relates to that specific button. We then, after we exit this while loop, we then call the no tone function to turn all the sounds off. And then after we exit the for loop, we write the write the LED to low in order to turn that off.